It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today, my guest is Michel L'Heureux, President and CEO of ILF Canada. Mike leverages over 15 years of experience in engineering and consultant in leading cross-functional teams to overcome project and organizational challenges. With ILF, Mike has held various titles, and before taking over as CEO, he served as the Director of Projects and Strategic Growth and as a project manager, respectively, leading and overseeing the functional project support teams for ILF Canada. Prior to ILF, Mike was a project manager and piping stress and materials engineer at Ridgeline Engineering and WorleyParsons, respectively. Mike is a member of several industry associations, including the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of Alberta, Engineers and Geoscientists of British Columbia, and the Project Management Institute. He holds a degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Saskatchewan and an MBA from Queen's University. Michel L'Heureux, welcome into the corner office.
Thanks for having me today.
Great to have you here. And I know it's been a very, very busy season for you, and it's great that we could find some time. I know we spoke a month or two back, and gosh, we're recording this in mid-April. It's going to be coming out sometime in the summer. So it'll be a lot warmer. I'm sure we're up where you are as well as where I am. But tell us a little bit about how things are going during these, as we go into, I guess, year two now of our pandemic times there. Are things starting to brighten up in Canada? And, how are you doing personally through this very interesting period of our lives?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think here in Alberta, we're heading into our third phase, I guess, of peak, where we're a little bit behind our neighbors to the south in the U.S. So we're still under some pretty heavy restrictions and experiencing some unfortunate peaks again in COVID cases.
Have vaccinations started up there? Is that starting to become more of a reality for many of your countrymen?
It is. Yeah. I mean, vaccinations on vulnerable population and the elderly and healthcare workers, started, I believe, about 2 months ago. And so the general population, my age group, for example, 40 and over, is we're able to get our vaccines now. So mine's actually this afternoon.
Oh, right. Okay. Good for you.
Yeah. So it's starting, but it's certainly rolling out slower than a lot of us would hope. And businesses are still under heavy restrictions, and for the most part 90% of our staff are working from home full time. There are some folks in part-time for business continuity reasons, but it's downtown Calgary is pretty quiet right now.
Right. Well, as we go into the second or third phase, as the case may be, let's just hope and pray things continue to get better, and that light at the end of the tunnel isn't another train coming at us, because we've been able to dodge a few these last year or so.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about you now. I know you're based in Alberta. Is that home for you, or where did you grow up? And tell us a little bit about your early days.
So I grew up on a small hobby farm in northern Saskatchewan.
Oh, wow.
So my father was a high school teacher, and had this hobby farm, about 15 miles from the town where he taught, and so that was home from the early 70s up until I moved away and lived in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan for I don't know, from 1995, I guess, up into at the end of my university in 2008, and moved to Calgary. So
brothers and sisters growing up?
One younger brother, he's 5 years younger than I am. Right. He's a oil field mechanic, cool. south of Lloydminster, Saskatchewan. So yeah.
And for those of our listeners who may not have heard of a hobby farm before, tell us a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, so it's it was about two quarter sections of land. It was an organic farm.
Wow.
So in the early 80s, having an organic farm, that was quite ahead of its time.
Yeah, very much so.
And my father is is a self-proclaimed and lived it. He's essentially a hippie, and so. But a very, very driven man, very hardworking, very hardworking parents. And so, he would do his teaching during the day and, jump on some pretty old farm equipment to tend to the land. And we had a little bit of everything. So it was a grain farm, traditional cereal crops. And then we also had a really big garden to feed the family and extended family, and chickens and ducks and goats and pigs, and we tried everything. We had a little bit of everything. So
was it a commercial operation per se, or more for friends and family?
It was more for friends and family. Yeah.
And mom helped out on the farm too, or did she also have a career? Or was that her career?
that was her career. Yeah. It was kind of she was kind of voluntold.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. This is what you need to do during the day when I'm in the classroom. Right?
Yeah. So it was it worked for them. But it was certainly a lot. It was a lot of work. I mean, the upbringing was certainly one of long hours, lots of work. Not many vacations, and always busy. That's for sure.
Any key lessons learned from those days that you kind of applied later in life as you grew up?
Hard work pays off. At the end of the day, but also, I think learning how to fail fast is better than riding a bad decision, for too long. So. That's certainly that would certainly be one of them.
Now, your dad was a school teacher. Did you have him as a teacher?
I did.
He at another school. You did.
I did. Gosh. Yeah. So that certainly was an interesting dynamic. Yeah. So he was a junior high teacher, and so he taught me for grade 7 and grade 9 for some classes. Yeah. So he was a French teacher and a phys ed teacher. Health and social studies. So I had him for those classes.
Yeah. How was that experience?
Well, I mean, if you're getting disciplined in the classroom, you can be sure that you're going to be getting disciplined 10 times harder when you get home.
I can imagine.
Right?
I can only imagine. Yeah. Kept you in line, I bet.
Yeah. So let's just say if there was a slip up, it only happened once.
That's a good thing. Were you a good student, Mike?
Not too bad. I mean, I had my ups and downs. I was.
How'd you do in French?
Horribly. I'm an incredible disappointment on that. From that aspect. I'm not bilingual. I'm an Anglophone with a Francophone last name.
Right.
And I didn't. The language never stuck with me. My mother is of Ukrainian descent.
Right.
And
so she spoke English in the home, I imagine.
So she spoke English in the home, and I guess I could, from what I remember, I guess I could speak French until I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. But then integrated into the English school system, and small town Saskatchewan. Quite honestly, being French wasn't all that popular in the early 80s.
Right. Sure.
So yeah.
Was Dad a French speaker? Did he grow up as a Francophone?
Yes.
Yeah, he did.
Yes, he did. Yeah,
it leads for interesting dynamics. I'm sure that the dinner conversations in particular. What other kind of activities you involved with? Sports, theater, music.
Yeah. So I mean, growing up, I played hockey. That was the sport. And being the Canadian kid that I am, so I played hockey throughout my teens up until 15 or 16. I don't remember exactly when, but I had a pretty major concussion as a goaltender, playing some competitive hockey, and that kind of put an end to hockey at that time. Started playing again as an adult, in my late 20s. So I took up the sport again and took up a nice easy right wing position in a rec team that was a little bit lower risk than the goaltending position. And I grew up in a very musical home. I mean, my father loved music, and was raised on a very heavy dose of Jethro Tull and Frank Zappa and the Beatles. So those were Sunday morning music blaring. So really fond memories of that. But my dad was a musician as well, and he just liked. So there was always musical instruments, in the home, and laying around for us to play around with when we were bored. And so I did take up guitar. I took up guitar when I was 11 or 12, and actually, got fairly okay at it through my teens, and actually was teaching guitar. In the small town that I grew up in, and played in some bands in my 20s, and had a lot of fun with it. So
that's awesome.
Not too much time for it these days, but yeah. And then
you don't lose it. You can pick it back up and play a few chords, I think.
I mean, you get muscle memory on some of the things, right? So, and then obviously, Calgary is a beautiful city, right next to the mountains. So we do do a little bit of skiing and golfing and hiking and things like that when time allows. So.
Now, I know you went on and got your ME degree at the University of Saskatchewan. We have an engineer in our family as well. My son is one. I am absolutely nowhere near that capable, nor is his mother. And I think it kind of goes back a generation or two. But did you exhibit, some engineering prowess when you were growing up? Were you a tinkerer, or as we'd call you, a MacGyver in the U.S. In terms of fixing things and so forth?
A little bit, I guess. I mean, growing up on the farm, you're always exposed to, a lot
of mechanics.
Having to keep things running, and especially on a hobby farm where we never had the latest and greatest. I mean,
of course,
late 70s, early 80s, the equipment that my father was using was from the 50s, and
wow, a lot of it secondhand, I'm sure.
All of it was secondhand, third, fifth, seventh hand. I mean,
always breaking down.
I mean, my father, he worked his ass off, but he also was entertainment for the neighbors. Because
I can imagine
the neighbors have at the time, the biggest, latest, greatest of everything. And there's my father with 30, 40-year-old equipment chugging along. So
the old International Harvester out.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, I was I came from my mother's father, like my grandfather and uncles on that side of the family. They were all auto mechanics, and my grandfather used to own a General Motors dealership. And so I was, raised around, when I went to visit them, I'd go hang out at the shop and had little projects there and things that you'd tinker on, and as well as the farm. So actually my first career was as an auto mechanic. So I worked in a General Motors garage actually for almost 10 years as an auto mechanic, and I had my own big red toolbox full of tools, and so I spent some time in the trades before I entered the engineering profession.
Now, did you choose that? I mean, at University of Saskatchewan, did you choose the school because of their engineering degree, or was that just the natural progression because that's the part of the country you grew up in?
Certainly the natural progression, but I mean, if you're in Western Canada, there's and it's always it's a debate because the competition and rivalry between the engineering schools in Western Canada. But I mean, University of Alberta, University of Saskatchewan are fairly widely accepted as two of the
solid schools,
two of the very solid engineering schools. I mean, University of Calgary is no slouch either, obviously. So being at U of S and getting your mechanical engineering degree through there, it was it's an easy choice. You're not compromising anything. It's a good school, very well regarded, and a very, very deep alumni, especially in Western Canada. So.
Did you know when you went in that that's what you wanted to study?
I mean, not really. I mean, I was entering unclassified studies in my late 20s, just knowing that I needed to get a different career and get out of the trades. And so I actually kind of went in on a bit of a shotgun blast approach. I'm going to go in, and initially I thought I was going to teach automotive mechanics at the trade school. So I applied to University of Saskatchewan education program to teach mechanics in their vocational ed program that they had. And then I also applied to commerce, and then I also applied to engineering. And, funny enough, I didn't get into education. Apparently I failed the interview.
Your dad was proud of that, I'm sure.
It's still the best failure, I guess, I think I could have had. And then I think I got into both commerce and engineering after my first year of unclassified studies, and took the engineering route. So
right. But
first job. Go ahead. First job out of engineering school, I worked for a consulting company, WorleyParsons, big global engineering firm. So at the time, one of the managers at WorleyParsons was a University of Saskatchewan alumni, and they were recruiting heavily at U of S.
On campus.
And so they had the on-campus recruiting sprees, and so I mean, it was a pretty attractive, I think, recruit for them. There was a few of us in our graduating class that were mature students, So I finished my engineering degree when I was 35. Wow. So there was a few of us that were up in that age bracket that were that were being pursued by a number of companies. So it was good.
And the move to Calgary, right, with them, or did you stay in Saskatchewan for that?
No, I moved to Calgary. So I was recruited in the fall of I think 2007, and moved to Calgary. Moved to Calgary in the middle of final exams with my wife at the time, who was pregnant, and moved to Calgary in April 2008. So.
Did they move you into management positions right away, or did they start you as an individual contributor? How did your career get started there?
You definitely started out as an individual contributor, and worked through the project ranks, and started small. The engineering profession actually has a lot of parallels to the trades, where you sort of do this apprenticeship program as an engineer in training, and you get your technical foundation in your craft, or in your discipline, specifically that you're training in. And so I was at WorleyParsons for almost 4 years.
Yeah. And did they give you management experience there, or did you get that later in your career as you moved on?
That came later. So the same engineering manager that recruited me into WorleyParsons actually left and had his own startup company, startup engineering company. And so he recruited a couple of us from WorleyParsons fairly early on.
That was Ridgeline, right? Ridgeline
Engineering.
Yeah,
that was Ridgeline. Yeah. So Derek Koenig, the CEO and founder of Ridgeline, started when he started that, he recruited myself and one of my colleagues in very early on in the in the inception of that company. And and then we kind of went for a bit of a ride with that. So I would say that's where the leadership and management experience came. Not necessarily through formal training, but certainly I would say the school of hard knocks.
What was the job when you first started managing people there, Mike?
It was project engineering, project management. Yeah.
Right. And was it a team of fellow engineers? Were you managing, folks that were doing a little bit of a different job that you had in the past? What was the structure of that?
I mean, in small matrix organization where you've got a number of different, multidiscipline engineers that are working on your team. Yeah. So, anywhere from a team of, 2 or 3 people up to maybe at that time, 10 or 12. Managing different projects and, getting on client sites, during construction and through the engineering design phase of things. So, very exciting, very fast paced, certainly very dynamic atmospheres. So,
I know from my son, engineers tend to have a pretty strong sense of self and their ideas about how things work. I can't imagine leading them and managing them was easy in your early days. Did you run into some encounters of a few stubborn engineers along the way?
Well, yeah, certainly. I mean, and that's actually that's something that they kind of hammer into you during engineering school is that
That's right.
it's certainly the part of the boot camp, and they want to develop that character so that you have the strength strength of character and of opinion and confidence in the work that you're doing and the due diligence and everything else that comes with ensuring the the safety of of the things that you're designing and the environment and the stakeholders that will be using it. So
right. Does it make it seem a little bit like herding blind cats in the night, or what were some of those early leadership lessons like that you had got you ahead, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, you can never communicate too much, that's for sure. And just making sure that everybody understands what their roles are and what they're clear on task and clear on schedule and making sure that they're headed in the right direction.
Certainly. Don't tell them how to do it. Tell them how to get there, right? Or at least point them in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a people business at the end of the day,
right?
And you really have to make sure that you've got the right people and a team that can work together. So.
Now, you've been just a little shy of 7 years, and now at the top of ILF Consulting Engineers in Canada. But you started as a senior project engineer. You came in at a fairly low level. I'm not sure it was an entry level position, but what was the attraction to make that change? And did you kind of have your eyes on the corner office when you joined back in August of 14?
Well, it was actually through acquisition. So,
was it? Okay.
So ILF Consultants acquired Ridgeline Engineering in the middle of 2014. So ILF being an international, global engineering consulting firm with European roots and base operations, they had a vision that they were attempting to execute on with the acquisition of Ridgeline and
were there any other operations in Canada at the time, or Ridgeline then became ILF Canada?
I mean, Ridgeline essentially became ILF. There was a small skeleton crew of people here from ILF that had come over from one specifically from Austria that had come over for a little while to try to start things up. And yeah, I mean, they, ILF brought in some project managers from Germany and, attempted to integrate Ridgeline into sort of the ILF vision of how things were going to be done, which was, at the time, quite a bit different from the way things were normally done in Calgary. So that came with some important lessons learned for those of us at Ridgeline who were learning how to work with an international company and also, good lessons for ILF as to how, business gets done in Canada or Western Canada compared to, Europe and some of the other, locations that ILF works in. So it was a tremendous.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say it was a tremendous learning, learning opportunity at the end of the day to go through that acquisition and the integration, through an international company and it certainly wasn't easy for either side at all times, but yeah, it was a really, at the end of the day, rewarding experience once once things calm down.
Right. What were some of the integration challenges in the early days?
I think certainly there was, you have your normal personality conflicts. You've got some culture conflicts, and so working through those certainly took tremendous amount of energy from both the both the leadership side from ILF and the Ridgeline team. And at the end of the day, there was a lot of lessons learned for sure. In terms of market strategy and let's say early assumptions on how ILF thought that we would be doing business here. So things definitely have taken some time to get to that normalization period. But we're certainly at a place now where the integration is well established, and sure. And everybody's pretty happy with how things are going now. So,
had they done other international acquisitions prior to buying Ridgeline?
A few, but not many. I mean, ILF being a privately held family company, right. It's a very organic growth model, and so that's the framework that the overall business strategy and growth drivers are launched under. So, right. So not a tremendous amount of acquisition. And that was right. certainly the only one in North America.
Yeah. And you've continued to grow organically since then. So from those early days of the 2 or 3 of you that got started, how many employees today in Canada?
So we have right now about 150 people engaged on projects. And that's a complement of full-time staff, casual consultants and contractors. So it's a very dynamic workforce, but currently I think sitting around 150 people engaged on projects.
Yeah, awesome. And did the original founder of Ridgeline that brought you over and the colleague that also joined you, are they still with the company or have they moved on?
They've moved on. I mean, very, very entrepreneurial in nature is, Derek is. And so he's got other ventures that he's started up since then. So,
yeah. Cool. Great. And what would you say is kind of the biggest shift in your leadership style, particularly over these last, 6 or 7 years since the acquisition?
Yeah, I think, going from, immature leaders do tend to, I would say, lean towards that micromanagement, very task level, supervision, certainly, learning how to trust your team, making sure that you're just monitoring versus, micromanaging and, making that transition. And part of that, when I did my MBA, that was a huge, another big growth, step for how I, viewed leadership and how things needed to be done. So, definitely.
Now you've done that rather recently, right? Well, that was prior to actually becoming president. Tell us about that. Did you take time off or did you do your MBA while you were still working in ILF?
I did my MBA while working full time. Mm-hmm, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was an executive program at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. And, Queens has a really good program that with virtual campuses across Canada that allow people to participate in the program, and they have a campus here actually in downtown Calgary where you can you sit in and you take your classes with your team there. So I think at the time, so 2016 and 2017 when I was in the program. There were 24 of us in Calgary out of the roughly 75 enrolled across Canada in the program. And so we'd then travel to Kingston or, there's a couple international trips as well that came with that, but we traveled to Kingston for our residential sessions. So.
Yeah, cool. And, probably not dislike or unlike your undergraduate years. I imagine you were a little bit older than some of the other MBA students.
Actually, no.
Were we all at the same age?
Everybody's pretty much in the same of the same vintage.
Right.
Yeah, those programs. And I think
to the executives for the most part. Yeah,
that's right. They cater to established professionals, and there's an interview process, and there's you have to submit your resume and work experience, and you have to be accepted in the program because you're going to be learning from your peers as much as you're going to be learning from your professors. So. I was very fortunate. I had a very good team and
good cohort.
An amazing cohort. So we're still in touch, quite often. So it was really good.
And did you specialize with your MBA in particular discipline?
I mean, finance, but it's a
Right.
it's a pretty broad-based program, and it's the specialization comes towards the end. But probably the most rewarding thing about the program itself was there was an option to go to Shanghai, China, and do
Cool.
a study tour at the China Europe International Business School, and
Nice.
so doing participating in lectures in Shanghai at that business school, that was that was something else. That was easily the most rewarding part of the program from a richness of learning and what you came out of it with, a whole new appreciation of what goes on there. So.
That's awesome. Now you've had, I think, about 4 or 5 jobs prior to becoming president and CEO of ILF Canada. Were you kind of on that trajectory? Is that something that you had in the back of your mind? Were you being groomed for that? Was, kind of going and getting the MBA part of that process, or, did it come about more organically as the business grew?
I would say it was quite organic. I mean, professional services, especially in the engineering side of things, in Western Canada, tend to be focused on the oil and gas business, and that's right. That's what ILF's core business was in Canada, and it's certainly with the downturn of the oil and gas industry in Canada, starting in the fall of 2014, the work just wasn't there the way it was during the boom years of 2004 to 11, 12, 14. Yeah. So basically the MBA was something that I looked at as an opportunity to maybe diversify my skill set and look for potential potential contingent opportunities depending on what the industry did. So sure. Our headcount fluctuated quite a bit, like a lot of the other professional service companies in Western Canada that were in that industry. So we were definitely bouncing up and down, and sometimes feast, sometimes famine. So sure. there was some lean years. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, it wasn't something that I was particularly targeting, but it was an opportunity that came available, and I thought, well, nobody knows the company at this point better than I do, and right. As far as what we have, what we had, left at the time and at the end of 2018. So I guess being able to to lead lead a reorganization and a bit of a transformation in how we were going to do things, looked like a good opportunity. So it's been it's been good. Our head count went from roughly 45 people active on projects up to the 150 where we are today.
So what kind of shift has gone on strategically in what you've done? Because it hasn't really improved a whole lot since 14, right? I mean, there's still a lot of challenges there, but have you moved kind of in your consulting practice to another area, or what's kind of spurred that growth over these last few years?
Well, we did some, we brought in some fairly well networked, individuals to join the team, and start to rebuild some of our business areas, and that allowed us to secure some work that wasn't within our grasp before, and that really gave us a really good bench strength that we could build on, and so it's been a lot of fun to get it up there, and about half of it's happened during COVID, so that's certainly been its own monster, but but it's been rewarding.
ILF is still privately owned, right? Still in European, obviously in its headquarters. How do you kind of roll out a company culture in that type of a mode? I mean, it's still only 6-7 years ago before Ridgeline was purchased, and you've got, I'm sure, several of the players have stayed on and so forth. Was there a cultural shift, or was there a pretty strong cultural alignment? And moving forward, how does that kind of work as you've kind of gone through these integration issues and become a fully fully, functional subsidiary in that regard.
Yeah, I mean the cultural alignment. Basically we've got three main pillars that we have to execute towards to ensure that our clients are going to come back and do more business with us. So transparency, trust, and quality, and that's the those are the pillars that we constantly base our decisions on, how we're executing our projects, how we're making decisions within the organization, and also at a project level when we're interfacing with clients. So at the end of the day, we are absolutely focused on ensuring that we're doing what's best for the projects, what's best for the clients. It may not always be what's best for ILF's bottom line, but at the end of the day, as a partner in industry and a partner to our stakeholders on the consulting side, we're here for, it's the long game. We're not here for necessarily chasing a quarterly dividend call and short-term view. We're here for we're here for a long time, and we're going to be part of the energy transition that's already happening, and we're contributing to that on various levels with our stakeholders and governments and industry. So as far as the culture, we're making sure that our team knows that they're part of the reason why we're successful, and part of the reason and part of the transition team, and how we're going to be viewing the new energy going forward. So.
Yeah. Well, and your recent growth speaks to that success. So congratulations on that. You've obviously been staffing up, and it looks like some of it's come this year, and obviously in the last couple of years. What do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire, Mike?
I mean, culture first and foremost. We have to make sure that the people that we're bringing in, have the right attitude, communication skills. You can be a subject matter expert, and you can have a lot of the technical background, but if you're unable to communicate or execute against what the end requirements are for the project or for the client, then it's not a good utilization of talent. So we're very much focused on making sure that, in addition to the technical competence that is a minimum requirement, that there's the right attitude and culture fit to make sure that our staff are constantly looking for opportunities to improve our clients' performance on their project, improve costs, improve schedule outcomes, whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of there's always a lot of drivers on project delivery, and there's certainly in this environment a lot of pressure to deliver both on the cost and schedule side. So we're certainly making sure that we have to have the right people to be focused on that. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about energy transition, right, in the oil and gas industry, and a lot of renewables. Yep. Is that become a bigger part of your offering, of your consulting work?
Yeah, we started our, we started efforts getting close to a year ago, shortly after I took over, to start putting the bench strength in place, the industry contacts in place, and engagement opportunities and activities where we can, ensure that we can, come to the table and contribute to the discussions. What I like the most about, being part of ILF is the energy transition, and elsewhere in the world is started 5, 10, 15 years ago, depending where you're at. So the colleagues that I have in Europe, Germany, Austria, they've been working on.
They're ahead of the curve.
They're ahead of the curve, absolutely. So the energy transition started there quite a few years ago compared to us. So we're really fortunate in having a lot of fun bringing our colleagues, from Europe into the conversations here in Canada to say, okay, what did we learn? What did we learn in Germany that we can pass on to
do better this time around?
Yeah, exactly, and give some of that feedback, and obviously there's a lot of technology providers based out of Europe that we have relationships with. So, being able to leverage that into the market here and provide the interface management and it's not something that a lot of our competitors have. So
yeah, that's awesome. And looking forward, kind of through the pandemic or whatever the next second, third, or fourth phase may be,
yeah.
What do you see as some of the biggest challenges in the industry? Is it the energy transition? Is it getting some of the basics right? I mean, if you had to kind of encapsulate the industry, where you think it's going to be 5, 6, 10 years from now, what are going to some of the biggest changes you expect to see, Mike?
I think the biggest changes are going to be how we end up, using energy at the end of the day. We're very fortunate in North America to have an abundance of natural resources.
That's right.
And I think what we're seeing and starting to live through is the transition of how we use them, and whether it's the end product, whether it's the end use, whether it's consumerism on a whole, and how that evolves. But I think how natural resources are used is going to start to transform, and it's not a question of whether or not we will still need natural resources or hydrocarbons or green energy, but how the energy is going to be distributed to end users and consumed is going to change without a doubt. So whether it be electricity converted to green hydrogen. And inserted into the gas grid, or whether it's natural gas converted to hydrogen to go into transport vehicles. There's a number of things that are going to have to happen and are starting to happen to meet the climate and GHG reduction goals that are in front of us. So.
Yeah, great. Well, you'll be a key component and a player, I'm sure, in making that happen. Mike, we're just about out of time. You've been very generous. We always ask one last question, and that's, what kind of career and life advice would you give our listeners? Maybe someone that's got their eyes in the corner office. Maybe they've gone through an acquisition like you did, and maybe had some uncertainty about what the future would be. I'm sure you had those moments. And what would you say to those folks that are progressing in their career?
Yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to change your mind. Don't get too hung up on what you think the path should look like, because there's a pretty good chance you're wrong, or it's going to change, or you're going to have to pivot. So, don't get too fixed on what you think the end goal should. Stay flexible. The opportunity you think you're chasing, it may not be the one that you land on and end up enjoying or finding rewarding. So certainly stay flexible, stay open-minded, and don't paint yourself into a corner.
Yeah, have a plan B. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike L'Heureux, President and CEO of ILF Consultants Canada. Thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you, Brent.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Handley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.